The marble angel above the grave gleamed under the bright morning sun as Ariston Vale, a self-made billionaire known for his cold precision and unshakable control, froze mid-step. Two small twin girls knelt quietly beside his son's grave, their tiny hands folded, their identical sun-kissed braids resting on worn shoulders, whispering silent prayers into the warm daylight air. Ariston had not seen a single soul visit this grave in 3 years, not since the tragic accident that had stolen his only child, Cale. Yet here, on a golden morning filled with birdsong and rustling leaves, two unknown children bowed their heads with heartbreaking devotion. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unseen connections that bind hearts together, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Life sparks stories to support meaningful storytelling that keeps hope alive. Ariston approached slowly, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel path, his mind racing with confusion and unease. The cemetery caretaker stood far off trimming hedges, and the sky above was cloudless, making the scene feel almost surreal. The twins looked no older than 7, wearing faded pastel dresses that had clearly been repaired multiple times. Their presence disturbed Ariston's carefully constructed emotional walls. For years, he had buried his grief beneath boardroom victories and financial empires, refusing to revisit the tender memories of his son, who had been gentle, generous, and full of curiosity. Watching these two children honor Cale's resting place stirred a storm inside him that he could no longer silence. The billionaire's mind flashed back to the day he lost Cale, remembering the hospital hallways flooded with harsh fluorescent light and the unbearable stillness that followed. Ariston had blamed himself endlessly, believing his obsession with business had robbed him of precious time with his child. Since then, he had transformed into a distant figure, feared in corporate circles and admired for his ruthlessness, but hollow inside. Seeing the twins kneeling in the bright daylight forced him to confront a question that shattered his emotional numbness. Why would strangers care for his son when he himself had failed to keep Cale's spirit alive? The girls eventually rose and carefully placed wild daisies on the grave, flowers that did not belong among the expensive imported roses Ariston's assistants usually arranged. Their simple gesture carried an innocence that pierced his heart. He noticed their worn sandals, the faded patches stitched onto their dresses, and the fragile hope glowing in their identical hazel eyes. As the twins prepared to leave, Ariston quietly signaled the caretaker to guide them toward the small bench nearby. Under the warm sunlight, the caretaker gently explained that the girls, named Myria and Solène, visited every week during daylight hours, walking nearly 2 miles from the town's old housing blocks. Ariston's breath grew shallow as he learned the truth. Years ago, Cale had secretly volunteered at a local community learning center Ariston had unknowingly funded through one of his charity branches. Cale had spent afternoons teaching children how to read, draw, and dream beyond their hardships. Myria and Solène had been among those children. The caretaker revealed that during a severe winter storm shortly before Cale's accident, he had helped the twins and their ill grandmother secure medical assistance and warm shelter without ever revealing his identity as the son of a billionaire. To them, Cale had simply been a kind mentor who showed them the power of hope and self-worth. The revelation struck Ariston like a tidal wave. His knees weakened, and he collapsed onto the bench as memories collided with overwhelming guilt and pride. He had spent years building skyscrapers and global enterprises, yet his son had quietly built something far greater within broken communities. The bright midday sun now felt heavy, exposing every regret Ariston had hidden. He watched the twins from afar as they skipped along the pathway, holding hands, their laughter echoing through the cemetery like a living tribute to Cale's forgotten legacy. Days passed, but Ariston found himself returning to the grave during daylight, observing the twins from a respectful distance. Slowly, he began visiting the learning center Cale once volunteered at. He discovered crumbling walls, outdated books, and children still clinging to fragile dreams. Something shifted inside him. The empire he had built suddenly felt incomplete. Determined to honor his son, Ariston funded the complete renovation of the center, expanded scholarships for disadvantaged children, and personally attended the reopening ceremony under the bright morning sky. He no longer stood as a distant billionaire, but as a father rediscovering purpose through compassion. Myria and Solène continued placing daisies at Cale's grave, but now they were joined by dozens of children whose lives had begun changing because of Ariston's transformation. The cemetery that once symbolized unbearable loss became a sanctuary of renewed meaning. Ariston stood beneath the shining marble angel, finally understanding that Cale's kindness had never died. It had simply been waiting to bloom in others. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that even the deepest grief can inspire new beginnings, please like, share, and subscribe to Life Spark Stories, so more people can experience messages of hope and humanity. Special request: comment below and share a moment when someone's kindness changed your life or inspired you to help others.